All right, welcome to The Explainer. We've all been told our whole lives that more choice is the ultimate freedom, right? But what if I told you that's just not true? Today, we're going to dig into this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea, how having more options can actually make us less decisive and maybe even a little miserable.
You know that feeling, right? You're staring at a gigantic restaurant menu or you're scrolling endlessly through some streaming service, and instead of feeling empowered by all the options, you just feel stuck, paralyzed. Well, that feeling, it's not just some personal quirk. It's a huge and often invisible problem in the world of business. Okay, so take that feeling of being totally stuck. Now imagine multiplying it across an entire team. In a really high-stakes business deal, you're not just dealing with one person's indecision. Nope, you've got a whole committee, usually somewhere between 6 and 10 people, and every single one of them is trying to navigate this sea of vendors and features. The potential for the whole thing to just grind to a halt it's enormous.
So first up, let's really look at the problem with choice itself, and how our deep-seated belief that more is better has kind of accidentally created a marketplace that just paralyzes our customers.
Then, we'll get into the why. We're going to dive deep into the surprising psychology behind this whole paradox and figure out exactly why having too many options can go so wrong. The core concept here is called the paradox of choice, a term made famous by psychologist Barry Schwartz. And it's actually pretty simple, but it's profound. The idea is that, yeah, some choice is great. It's liberating. But there's a tipping point. And once you cross it, more options stop helping, and they start actively hurting, causing anxiety, indecision, and in the end, less satisfaction.
So why does this happen? Well, it really boils down to 3 big psychological traps we all fall into. First, there's analysis paralysis. The brain just gets overloaded and it freezes. It's like a computer with way too many tabs open. Second, our expectations escalate. If you have 50 options, you start to expect absolute perfection, which is an impossible standard to meet. And that leads directly to the third trap, regret. Even when you make a perfectly good choice, you can't help but wonder if one of the other options might have been just a little bit better.
Here's a really easy way to think about it. Imagine a 200-item, all-you-can-eat buffet versus a carefully curated, chef-designed meal. The buffet sounds great, but it creates anxiety, right? You're paralyzed. What should I get? What if I miss the best dish? And you're filled with regret later. But that curated meal, it gives you confidence. You can actually enjoy it, and you walk away feeling satisfied. But the problem is, too many businesses are offering their customers that stressful buffet when what people really crave is an expert guide to serve them the perfect meal.
So all this theory sounds good, but you're probably wondering, does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's look at 3 companies that totally embraced simplicity and saw some absolutely incredible results. Okay, first up, a SaaS company, a software company. They had a great product, but their growth had just completely stalled. And you know what the culprit was? A pricing page with five different tiers and a dense grid with over 40 different features. It was just completely overwhelming for anyone trying to sign up. So their solution? They simplified. They actually studied their most successful customers to see what they really needed. Then they collapsed those 5 confusing tiers into 3 super clear, benefit-driven plans: Essential, Pro, and Enterprise. And here's the crucial part. They stopped forcing customers to become experts on their product and instead just guided them to the right solution. And the result? A 35% jump in the number of people converting from a free trial to a paid plan. Even better, their sales cycle actually got 15% shorter because customers were basically pre-sold on the right plan before they even talked to a salesperson. It's just perfect proof that clarity creates incredible efficiency.
All right, next up, a manufacturing firm. Their biggest strength was also their biggest weakness. They had this catalog with thousands of highly configurable parts, and it was an absolute nightmare, not just for customers, but for their own sales team, who were spending ages creating these incredibly complex quotes. So, instead of forcing customers to try and build a solution from thousands of tiny individual pieces, they did something brilliant. They created pre-configured application kits for specific industries, like aerospace or medical. And just like that, the entire sales conversation shifted from which obscure part number do you need to what's the big problem you're trying to solve.
This one change slashed the time it took to create a customer quote by 40%. 40. And because their offerings were suddenly so much easier to understand, they also boosted their qualified leads by 20%. See, they didn't get rid of any of their products. They just packaged everything in a much, much smarter way.
Our final case study is a marketing consultancy that was suffering from that classic jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none problem. They had a list of over 30 different services, which, crazily enough, actually made them seem less like experts and just attracted a bunch of low-value, one-off projects.
So they made a really bold move. They analyzed their absolute best and most profitable projects, and then they just cut that huge list of 30-plus services down to just 3 focused, high-value solutions. In an instant, they went from being just another generalist to a sought-after, in-demand specialist.
And the payoff? It was huge. A 50%, 50, increase in their average contract value. Just by offering less, they started attracting bigger, better clients who saw them as the experts and were more than willing to pay a premium for that focused expertise. Okay, the proof is pretty clear. So now, how can you actually put this to work? Here is a simple 4-step roadmap you can use to start simplifying your own offerings.
It all starts with a simple audit. First, you've got to identify the hotspots. Find those places, like a pricing page or a long contact form, where you just know customers get confused or stuck. Second, analyze the data, and I mean really dig in. Find out what your absolute best customers are actually buying and using, not what you think they value. Third, curate and bundle. Start grouping your services or features into logical packages that solve a real specific problem for someone. And finally, number 4, guide the decision maker. This is so important. Don't be afraid to be the expert. Use a recommended tag, create a simple quiz, do whatever it takes to steer people toward the best fit for them.
Ultimately, it really all comes down to this one idea. In today's noisy, chaotic world, clarity is one of the most valuable things you can possibly offer. It's not about having the most features. It's about providing the absolute clearest path to a solution. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. For your own work, or maybe even for your own life. Where is the pursuit of more getting in the way of achieving better? Because the answer to that question might just be your next big opportunity. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.